This morning, my phone lit up like a flare. 67 missed calls. Every number used to mean something. Now they're just ghosts with area codes. The first was from my mother, the last, my sister. 12 years of silence broken in one night. Not a single message on birthdays, not a word when I graduated under a different name, and now suddenly they're calling. Not because they care, not because they changed, but because something is coming back, something they buried. And it has my voice. I was 14 the last time I heard that voice, my own calling out their names on a cold mountain trail. No one answered then. Now they want answers. They want to reach me. But the person they left behind isn't the one picking up the phone. She's gone. And I'm what came after. It was meant to be a bonding trip. Just one trail, one family. Gray Rock Peak, 2 hours up, quiet steep, no arguments, no tension, just silence that felt loaded. Halfway to the lake, someone said, "Let's split up. Meet on the other side." I nodded, took a step back to fix my bootlace. Just a few seconds. When I looked up, they were gone. No footsteps, no voices, just wind, pines creaking, the click of my breath. At first I smiled, thought it was a game. Then I heard it. A laugh behind a boulder. Susan's laugh, sharp, cold. Let's see if she can get out on her own. Those words, still clear after all these years. I waited. 2 full hours, calling until my throat cracked. No one came. Not even once. That's when I understood. I wasn't lost. I was left. The ranger looked confused. I stared at the wall, didn't blink, didn't cry. They offered water, a blanket, a chair. I sat, but I didn't speak. Inside, everything had gone quiet. Not broken, not shattered, just sealed, like a door that closed, slowly, gently, but for good. They filed a report, called it a misunderstanding, said I'd run off after an argument. Teenage drama. They called my mother, she confirmed it, said I was emotional, said I needed time. The file was closed, just like that. No search, no charge, no truth. They moved on. So I did too, but not in the way they expected. I disappeared, changed names, cities, hair color, jobs, no trail, no trace. For years I just survived. Quiet work, cheap rooms, no friends, no stories, but I never stopped remembering. Not the mountain, not the silence, and definitely not the sound of my sister laughing. That sound stayed with me, like a scar you can still hear. At 17, I learned how to vanish. Not just hide, disappear. I took jobs no one cared to ask about. Clean ones, cash only. I moved often, changed names like clothes. Never stayed too long, never got too close. I slept light, ate little, watched everything. Fear became habit, but habit becomes skill. I got good at noticing faces, patterns, timings. People think they're invisible online. They're not. By 22, I was tracking them. Not obsessively, just enough. Enough to know Susan moved to Chicago, became a therapist. The irony didn't escape me. Margaret, my mother, got remarried. Twice. My father drank himself sick. They lived, laughed, posted family photos. No trace of the girl they left behind. No memorial, no missing poster, no guilt I could see, just smiles in every frame. Like I'd never existed. Like the mountain never happened. And that's when something inside me shifted. I stopped surviving and started preparing. It started with a name. A listing, hidden in a local registry, a cabin. Same mountain, same trail, same place they left me behind. They bought it again, 12 years later, like nothing ever happened. Like my blood wasn't still in the dirt. They posted smiling photos by the fireplace, toasting marshmallows, laughing in folding chairs, no ghosts in their eyes, no memory of me. That's when I knew they didn't regret it. Not even a little. They moved on without wait. I had carried it all, and they none, so I stopped waiting. For an apology, for understanding, for any version of truth. Instead, I made plans. I found the land next door. Same elevation, same slope, same view. Bought it through a shell company, no names attached, no questions asked. And then I built my own cabin, not to live in, but to watch, because some stories aren't over. They just go quiet until someone decides to speak again. I designed everything myself. One floor, no frills, just function. No one would suspect what it was for. But every nail, every board, every cable had purpose. Hidden cameras faced the trail. Motion sensors, night vision, facial recognition. I placed tiny mics near the bends in the path. They never saw them. Didn't even think to look. Every time they came up that trail, I watched. Every word, every smile, every lie. Margaret still laughed the loudest. Susan had a nervous habit tapping her thumb. She did it back then too. Around the fire they told stories. Cooked meals like nothing ever burned. One night Susan said, "This place feels lighter now." Lighter. Like removing a stone from your shoe. I sat in my dark cabin, hearing that, and I didn't cry. Not anymore. I just sat there, holding a pen, writing the first line of a note. No name, no threat, just a question. What would you do if she came back? Me. I left the note on their porch. Plain paper, black ink, no signature. No one saw me, not even the cameras. They slept through it. Morning came. Susan stepped out first, coffee in hand. She bent down, read the words, froze, didn't speak, didn't blink, just stood there. Then she called for Margaret. I watched from 1 mile away, through a silent screen. Margaret read it. Her face changed. Not shock recognition, like a memory waking up, like a voice from a place she buried. She looked at the trees, at nothing, as if the mountain might answer. They sat inside after that, quiet. Didn't hike, didn't laugh. But the phone calls started. One, then another, then dozens. Old numbers I hadn't used in years lit up. Emails too. Even lawyers reached out. But I didn't respond. Not yet. I wanted the weight to build, the silence to press. Like it once pressed on me. The calls kept coming, day and night. Different area codes, different voices. Some left voicemails shaky, unsure. Is this Eleanor? It's been so long. Please call back. I didn't. Because 12 years ago, I begged. I screamed into empty trees. No one answered then. Now they wanted a reply, but I wasn't rushing this. Not after what they'd erased. I watched their routines shift. They double-locked the doors, kept lights on late. Margaret flinched at shadows. Susan jumped at sounds in the woods. They were waiting for something. Someone. I let them wait. A week passed, then 2. And finally, one morning before sunrise, I packed a small bag. Same boots, same coat. The air was colder than I remembered, but I climbed, step by step, back to that porch where their world had cracked and mine was just beginning to open. The porch looked the same. Weathered wood, that same creak under the third plank. I stood there. No knocks, no sounds, just breath. Then the door opened. Susan, older, smaller than I remembered. Eyes wide, hands trembling. She whispered my name like it was sacred or cursed. Eleanor, I didn't answer. Didn't step forward, just reached into my coat, handed her an envelope. She took it slowly, like it might burn. No words, no hugs, no tears, only silence. She opened it right there. Her hands shook harder. Inside copies, the Ranger's report, their original statements, in ink, a timeline that didn't add up. One camper's affidavit, he heard them laugh that day, and a recording, recovered from a deleted backup. Susan's voice, clear as snow. Let's see if she can get out on her own. She heard herself, out loud, for the first time. She didn't move, didn't blink, just kept reading. Margaret came to the door, stopped behind her, saw the papers. Her lips parted, but no sound came. I stood still, watching, not angry, not shaking, just steady. They had 12 years, 12 birthdays, 12 chances. And they chose silence. Now there were no excuses left. Susan dropped the papers. They floated down like leaves. Margaret finally spoke. "We thought you ran off. You were upset." Her voice cracked on the word upset. I said nothing, because the truth was right there, on paper, in audio, and in the air between us. This wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about recognition. They buried me, lied, laughed, then lived while I vanished. But I wasn't invisible now. They had to see me, really see me, even if it was just for this moment. I turned to leave, and no one stopped me. The wind followed me down the steps. Cold, familiar. I didn't look back, didn't wait for apology, because if it was going to come, it would have come long ago. They had years. They chose silence, and now they had truth. Not twisted, not edited, just held up to the light. I walked past the trees that once listened to my cries, past the boulder where they hid. The trail hadn't changed much, but I had. Each step down felt lighter, not like escape, but like release. This time, I wasn't limping, I wasn't afraid, I didn't need to prove anything or ask for anything. I had already said what mattered without shouting, without begging. Before I reached the base, I stopped, took one long breath, let the cold air fill my chest, then whispered to no one. They'll remember me now, not for the girl they left, but for the woman who returned. By morning, the story had legs. I didn't leak it. Didn't need to. Truth moves fast when it's been buried too long. A local blogger found the court filings, the ranger's report, the audio clip. It spread from there, small news sites, forums, then national media. Therapist accused of abandoning sister as teen. Family secret resurfaces after 12 years. They tried to control the story. Statements were made. Apologies crafted by lawyers. Margaret said it was a tragic misunderstanding. Susan claimed she barely remembered the day, but the tape remembered, and so did I. People started asking questions. Reporters camped near the cabin, their peaceful retreat now a spotlight. I stayed quiet, watched the storm they created. The same silence they gave me, I gave back. But this time it echoed louder, and now the whole world was listening. Not to rumors, not to gossip, but to the voice they once tried to erase. The comments came fast. Thousands, then tens of thousands. People shared their own stories. Abandonment, silence, families that chose comfort over truth. Some called me brave, others called me broken, but most understood. Women in their 60s wrote, I was left to, different way, same ache. Veterans, nurses, mothers, they all saw pieces of themselves in me. It wasn't just my story anymore. It was a mirror, one they'd avoided for years, and now they were ready to face it, even if my family wasn't. Margaret stopped showing her face. Susan disabled her practice site. The phone numbers went quiet. Not one of them spoke again. No interviews, no defenses, just silence. But this silence, it didn't feel like power. It felt like shame. And maybe for the first time, they understood how it felt to be erased, not by strangers, but by the people who said, we love you, and then proved otherwise. I didn't celebrate, didn't smile when headlines faded. This was never about revenge. That's too easy, too shallow for what they did. It was about truth, putting it where everyone could see, letting it stand without shouting, without flame. Now it stood on its own, cold, simple, undeniable. They tried to rewrite the past, but paper doesn't lie, and sound doesn't forget. After 12 years, I didn't need their guilt, didn't need their tears. All I needed was space. To breathe in a name I finally reclaimed, to live without ducking shadows, to speak without choking on history. Some people wait their whole lives for closure, but me, I didn't want the door shut. I wanted it open, so others could walk through, see what silence does, feel what survival costs, and maybe choose different. That's when I knew. My story wasn't ending. It was finally mine to begin. I moved out of the cabin, left it standing, untouched, no furniture, no memories, just walls and wire. Let the wind take what it wanted. I didn't need to watch them anymore. I'd seen enough. Now it was time to watch myself, to see what I could build, not from fear, but from choice. I returned to the city, not the same name, but this time not hiding either. A small apartment, a clean lease, my name on the mailbox. It felt strange to exist on paper again, to be found by the right people. I opened a new account, Not to track, not to spy, just to breathe. Joined a local group, people like me, quiet, kind, carrying weight they didn't deserve. We met every Thursday. No pity, no preaching, just stories. Some were harder than mine, some weren't, but all of them mattered. And finally, I let mine matter too. I kept to myself at first, listened more than I spoke. Their voices were gentle, some cracked, some quiet, but all of them carried something familiar: loss, betrayal, loneliness. A woman named Ruth talked about her brother. Left her at a gas station when she was 8. She never saw him again. A man named Glenn said nothing for 3 weeks. Then one night he said, "They told me I wasn't worth staying for." No one cried. We just nodded. Because we knew some pain doesn't need fixing, just space to sit beside you. I found comfort in that. Not healing, not yet, but presence. One evening, they asked for my story. I paused, then said, "It started on a mountain." That was all. No names, no details, just enough. And they didn't press. They just said, "We're glad you're here." And for the first time in years, I was too. I started walking more. Early mornings, empty sidewalks, just me, the cold and quiet. No one hiding behind trees, no cameras, no watching, just breathing. Some days I carried a notebook, wrote down things I never said out loud, not to accuse, just to release. Pages filled slowly, not with rage, but reflection. Memories I'd buried came softer now. The lake, the trail, even Susan's laugh. It didn't cut like it used to. It faded. Not because it didn't matter, but because I mattered more. One morning, I passed a bookstore, saw a flyer in the window, Writer's Circle, Thursday nights, same night as group. I hesitated, then went in. Signed up without a fake name. No aliases, no shields. That night I read a page. My hands trembled, but my voice steady. And when I finished, someone whispered, "That didn't sound like a victim." And I smiled, because I'm not. I kept going back every Thursday, different faces each week. But the story's always raw, always real. We didn't judge grammar, we listened for truth. One man wrote about his mother's silence, another about sleeping in his car for years. We clapped after every reading, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. I brought more pages each time, little pieces, nothing dramatic, just moments. The sound of branches snapping at night, the way cold water burned cracked lips. How quiet feels louder when no one's coming. I didn't say names, didn't need to, they understood anyway. One woman came up after. She touched my shoulder and said, "You write like someone who made it out." I nodded. I did. But inside I knew this wasn't just about getting out. It was about arriving. Fully. Finally. And this time, I wasn't arriving alone. I started using my real name again. Not loudly. Just in places that mattered. The library card, the coffee order, the workshop sign-up sheet, Eleanor. Every time I wrote it, my hand felt steadier, like the name belonged, like I belonged. I changed my voicemail, deleted old email accounts, closed the last alias I ever used, let it all go. Not out of anger, but because I didn't need it anymore. The woman I became didn't need hiding. She needed light and room to keep writing, to keep walking, to keep choosing her own direction. People think survival is about escape. It's not. It's about return to self, to truth, to breath, and for me, to the name they once erased. I didn't reclaim it to confront them. I reclaimed it to live, to stand, and to be found not by them, but by myself. A letter came one morning, no return address, just my name written soft. I opened it with steady hands. Inside 3 lines, I read what you wrote. I recognized the voice. "I'm sorry." No signature, but I knew the handwriting. Susan's. I didn't cry, didn't write back. I folded it once, slid it into a drawer. Not to save her, but to remind myself that truth reaches people, even when we say nothing more. Later that day, I read to the group again, a piece about shadows that follow and the choice to stop running. A woman named Carla asked if she could share it. Her daughter, she said, needed those words. I said yes. because they weren't just mine anymore. They belonged to anyone who'd ever been left behind and kept walking anyway. That's what stories do. They don't heal everything, but they light the way forward, even if just a few steps. The next week, more people came, not just to listen, but to speak. New voices, new wounds, same ache. One woman said, "I never told anyone what my brother did." Then she told us. Not for sympathy, but for air. Words held in for decades came out like breath. Slow, honest, freeing. And no one flinched, not even once. I stayed after, helped stack chairs. Carla smiled and said, "You're building something here, you know." I didn't answer right away. Just looked around the room. It wasn't mine. But somehow it felt like home. Not because of walls, but because of truth. It echoed softly, not in microphones, but in hearts choosing to stay. Every week someone new showed up, not to be fixed, just to be heard. And that was enough. Sometimes more than enough. Because survival isn't just about breath. It's about being seen. One night, a teenage girl came in late, sat in the back, hoodie up, eyes low, didn't speak, just listened. Week after week, she kept returning, never said her name, never stayed long, but she came. And that meant something. I remembered that look. The one I wore at 14, like the world had already decided you weren't worth keeping. I left a note for her one night, just 4 words. "You belong here too." The next week, she sat 1 row closer, still quiet, but less alone. After the session, she walked past me slowly, then turned back and whispered, "Thank you, Eleanor." My name in her voice wasn't heavy. It was hope. Passed like a thread between hands that understand. I didn't reply, just nodded. Because sometimes the smallest step towards someone is louder than a lifetime of silence. And sometimes being seen once can save you twice. I started getting emails, not press, not noise, just people. Strangers who'd found my writing, or heard pieces of my story pass between hands, between voices. They wrote things like, "I thought I was the only one. I never told anyone. Until now. I didn't survive what you did, but I survived something. Every message different, but somehow the same heartbeat. Not asking for answers, just needing connection." And slowly I began to reply, not with advice, just presence. "I hear you. You're not alone. Keep going." I didn't have to fix them. I just had to be real. And that was enough. The weight I once carried in silence was now a bridge, and across it others were walking, bringing their own stories, their own names, their own return. Sometimes broken, always brave, and I welcomed every single one. One morning I was invited to speak, not to tell my story, but to share what came after. The living, the rebuilding, the quiet strength no one sees. It was a local event, small room, folded chairs, warm light. I almost said no, but something in me whispered, "You're ready." I wore a simple shirt, no makeup, no mask, stood in front of maybe 30 people and said, "There are stories we survive that don't survive us." Then I paused, let the silence settle. I spoke about choosing breath, about walking forward even when no one calls your name, no drama, no anger, just truth. Afterward, an older man shook my hand. He said I lost my daughter, not to death, to silence. I looked him in the eye and said, "Then maybe she's still listening." He nodded. No words, just knowing. And I felt it my voice, not just mine anymore. A year had passed, quietly, no headlines, no calls, just breath, routine, peace, until I saw a photo online. The cabin, my family's, still standing, still theirs, new curtains, a fresh coat of paint, but the same bones. And suddenly something in me stirred, not anger, not pain, just unfinished. There were no more stories to tell, no more truths to expose, but there was one thing left to visit, not for them, for me. I packed light, same boots, same jacket, not to repeat the past, but to face it, one final time. The trail felt smaller, the trees thinner, or maybe I was just stronger. At the top, I didn't go to their door, I walked past it, to the rock where they once hid, where I first heard them laugh. And this time I laughed too. Soft, free, unafraid. I sat on that same rock, the one that once held fear. Now it just held me. No ghosts, no echoes, only wind. I let my hands rest on my knees, felt the ground beneath me, solid, still mine. The mountain hadn't changed much, but I had. I closed my eyes, let memories pass, not push them down, not cling to them either, just let them be. There was no audience, no spotlight, just sky, and enough quiet to finally listen inward. I whispered the words I once shouted, their names, soft, gentle, then let them go, one by one, not to forgive, but to free space inside me, for something new, maybe peace, maybe nothing, but it felt real, and that was enough. I stood, brushed the dust from my hands, and for the first time on that trail, I didn't look back, because the past wasn't chasing me anymore. The descent was quiet, no rush, no fear, just step by step, same path, different weight. I remembered where I fell, where the ankle cracked, where I bled. I paused there, not out of pain, out of memory. Bent down, touched the ground. It was dry now, no trace of me, but I didn't need proof. I had lived it. That was enough. Farther down, I saw hikers, young, loud, carefree. They nodded as they passed. I nodded back. They didn't know my story, didn't need to. I wasn't walking with a wound anymore. I was walking with wisdom. Hard-earned, quiet, steady. At the base, I sat on a bench. Same one from years ago, older now, like me, but still holding. I closed my eyes, breathed deep, and knew this mountain no longer held power over me. It held history, and now it could rest. A week later, someone reached out. Not press, not family, just a producer from a small podcast. She said, I don't want drama. I want truth, quiet truth. Normally, I would have said no. But something in her tone felt steady, so I agreed. 1 hour, one mic, one room, no script, just breath and memory. I told the story in pieces, not the betrayal, not the noise, just the parts that stayed with me. The cold, the walk, the silence that nearly swallowed me whole, and how I came back louder, but not with shouting, with presence, with choice. At the end, she asked, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be? I paused, then said, they didn't leave you because you were weak. They left you because they were. And for once, the mic didn't feel like exposure. It felt like closure, clean, still, real. The episode aired quietly. No big launch, no flashy title, just my name, my voice, a still image and soft music, but people found it. Shared it, not with noise, but with care. In case you need this, they wrote, or simply, listen, I didn't check the numbers, didn't read the comments. What mattered had already happened. I'd spoken, on my own terms, for no one's approval, only truth. One day a letter came in the mail, handwritten, from a woman in Montana. She said, I heard your voice in my car. I had to pull over because it felt like you were telling my story too. She signed it, thank you from the girl I once was. I held the letter in my lap, let it sit there a while, then folded it gently, placed it next to Susan's, 2 letters, same weight, one from the past, one from a stranger. Both reminders that truth travels farther than pain ever could. Spring came slow that year, rain first, then light. Windows open, air shifting. I planted something for the first time, just herbs. Small pots by the window, basil, mint, a little thyme. Every morning I checked them, not expecting much, but they grew. Simple, quiet, steady, like healing does, not in big moments, but in little ones that ask for nothing. I started cooking again, not to fill time, to feed myself well, to care in ways I'd forgotten. Music played low in the kitchen, old records, dusty edges, warm strings. Sometimes I danced alone. No audience, no mirror, just feet on tile, breath in rhythm. It wasn't joy exactly, it was something gentler, a return to softness, to self. I lit a candle one night, let it burn slow, no prayer, no wish, just thanks for surviving, for still being here, and finally for being whole. I no longer dreamed of the mountain, not the trail, not their faces, just sky, open, quiet, wide. The kind you don't run from, you rest under. Sometimes people still reached out. Not many, just enough. Some wanted to share. Some wanted to say thank you. And some just wanted to be heard once in their life. I answered when I could, not to carry them, just to remind them they could walk on their own. One woman wrote, I haven't spoken to my sister in 20 years, but your words made me call her. Another said, I thought it was too late to come back to myself. Now I know it's not. Those messages sat in a folder on my desk, not for proof, but for pause. Because pain, when transformed, doesn't disappear. It becomes light. And light, even quiet, reaches places the loudest screams never will. I wrote again. Not for a crowd, just for clarity. A small collection, short reflections, pieces of then shaped by now, no names, no details, just truth. A publisher reached out, said, there's something here. Would you consider sharing more? I thought about it. Long walks, slow mornings, then said yes, but only if it stayed honest, only if it stayed quiet. They agreed. The book came out small, no fanfare, no tour, just a soft cover and a title I chose myself, What We Leave Behind. It reached more people than I expected, but it wasn't the numbers, it was the letters, the folded notes, the underlined pages people sent back to me. And every time I read the same line marked by different hands, you weren't forgotten. I see you. And somehow each time it felt brand new, like being found again but on purpose. One evening I was asked to read. A library in a quiet town, folded chairs, warm lights, no cameras, no stage, just people, all ages, all carrying something. I brought a worn copy of my book, dog-eared, underlined, not for show, for memory. When I stepped up, I didn't feel nervous, just present. I read the passage about the trail, the silence, the choice to walk anyway. I didn't explain it, didn't need to. After a teenage boy approached, eyes full, shoulders small, he said, I didn't know you could survive something like that. I looked at him, steady, soft. You can, I said. And you will, he nodded. Not with confidence, but with something better. Recognition. He didn't need to say more. I didn't need to ask. Because sometimes being seen by a stranger is the first time you ever feel real. I walked home that night under a quiet sky. No noise, no rush, just streetlights stretching long across pavement. The kind of stillness you don't get in the middle of survival. Only after. Only when the fight no longer owns you. I passed a mirror by a shop window, caught my reflection, not searching, just pausing. The woman looking back, she wasn't angry anymore, not even sad, just whole. Scarred, yes, but not in hiding. I stood there for a moment longer, then smiled, not for anyone watching, just for me. I thought about the mountain, how far away it felt now, not erased, but softened. I didn't need it to haunt me anymore. It taught me what it came to teach, and now I was walking forward without looking back. Not stronger because of what happened, stronger because I chose what happened next. Weeks passed, then months. Life didn't shift all at once, just little pieces, a new cafe I liked, a neighbor who waved every morning, a friend who called just to say, hey, I'm making soup, want some small things? Ordinary things. But for someone who lived in silence for years, they felt like miracles. I wrote less now, not because I had nothing to say, but because I was too busy living. That felt like the loudest chapter yet. One morning I opened my window. Breeze moved through the room. Light touched the wall. I sat there, coffee warm in hand, and realized I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for justice, not for answers, not for them. The story didn't need a perfect ending. It needed an honest one. And maybe this wasn't the final page after all. Just a quiet pause before something new began. One day I got a message, short, simple, from a name I didn't recognize. It said, My daughter shared your story with me. She thought I needed to read it. She was right. No more words, just that. But I sat with it for a long time because somewhere out there a mother read about a girl left behind. And maybe she thought of her own child. Maybe she reached for a phone or whispered a name she hadn't said in years. That's the thing about stories. They don't always change the people we expect, but they ripple softly, quietly, farther than we'll ever see, and sometimes they land exactly where they're needed. Not for closure, but for opening. A window, a heart, a chance. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. Some messages don't ask for answers. They just remind us that healing moves in every direction. I visited the mountain once more, not to prove anything, just to walk, no camera, no plan, just me, and a trail that no longer held weight. It was autumn, leaves crisp underfoot, the same air but different breath. I passed the fork in the path, the one where they disappeared. This time I didn't stop, didn't freeze, just kept moving, higher, then down again, full circle but not trapped inside it. At the top I sat beneath a tree, opened a small notebook, wrote one sentence, I am still here. That was enough. No big speech, no final reckoning, just presence. That's what survival becomes eventually, not a scream, not even a whisper, just a steady return. To yourself, to breath, to a life no longer defined by the leaving, but by the choosing to stay. I came down from the mountain as the sun fell, not rushed, not watched, just walking, each step its own decision. Not to escape, but to arrive. At the base, I passed a family, 2 kids, a father, a woman holding a map. They looked lost. She smiled and asked, "Do you know which trail leads to the lake?" I pointed. "The left one." "It's steep, but worth it." She thanked me, then paused. "You've been here before?" I nodded, once or twice. She didn't ask more, and I didn't offer, because sometimes what we carry isn't meant to be told. It's meant to be lived through and left in gentler soil. I watched them walk away, laughter rising like birds, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the pull of the past, only the calm of the present, and the quiet promise that there is still more ahead. That night, I lit one last candle. Not for memory, for presence. I sat by the window, notebook open, blank page, not empty, but waiting. I thought about everything. The silence, the climb, the leaving, and everything that followed. Then I wrote 5 words. Now I choose the ending. Not because the story's done, but because I'm the one holding the pen. I don't need their names anymore. Don't need the past to speak first. I've said what mattered. Not to be heard, but to be whole. If you're listening now, if something in this story echoed, know this. You are not what they left. You are what you chose next. And if you're still walking even slowly, you're already rewriting everything. So write it, speak it, live it. Not for them, for you. I did. And I'm still here, stronger, softer, louder than silence ever was. If any part of this story stayed with you, a line, a moment, a breath, I'd love to know. Leave a comment, share what it brought up for you. And if you want to hear more stories that speak softly but stay long, hit subscribe. There's more to come. Not louder, just real.